My judges ready? And the timer? The affirmative team? Thank you. And Roman?
Yep.
All right. Jedi Master Qui-Gon Jinn once said, "Until the possible becomes actual, it's only a distraction." What I'm going to do in this first negative speech is prove that the affirmative plan and their justifications are only possible, not actual. Theory, not reality. Before we look into this, however, we're going to look at what we believe should be the criterion of today's debate round, or how you should look at the round. The affirmative team didn't present you with a criterion or weighing mechanism, so we believe this round should be judged through the criterion of stock issues. This simply means the affirmative team has to uphold all 4 of the stock issues, the standards of team policy debate, before their ballot is merited. And we're going to take a look at 2 of the stock issues. We'll first look at the issue of solvency, whether or not they can actually solve for the harm. And second, we'll look at significance and whether or not there's actually a significant problem, and if their plan is a significant reform. So let's jump right into it. We're first going to take a look at an issue of funding. Now, this was brought in cross-examination. Now, in the first affirmative speech, the affirmative team didn't actually talk about funding. They didn't give you any details about funding. So I would ask the affirmative team to actually do this in their next speech. They have to prove a couple of things. First, they have to prove how much money their plan would actually cost for the United States to destroy these old cluster munitions we would no longer be using. Second, they have to prove to you exactly where this money is coming from and whether or not it is eligible for the affirmative team to take the funds from. Before these numbers are in fact provided to you, the solvency by the affirmative team is unfounded, given the funds for their plan are not proven. And now we're going to take a look at 2 individual solvency points, or reasons why the affirmative team can't actually solve for the harms. That is solvency. Solvency point 1 is international stockpiles. International stockpiles. Now the fact is that the United States and Russia are not the only countries who have cluster munitions. I'm going to take a look at a quote from Captain Matthew E. Dunham, who at the United States Air Force, he has a JD. He said in spring 2010, quote, "The United Kingdom and several NATO nations are signatories to the cluster munitions convention. But Brazil, China, India, Israel, Pakistan, and Russia, nations which have the major stockpiles of cluster munitions, have not signed the agreement," unquote. So who does the affirmative plan deal with? The affirmative plan deals with the United States and Russia. And this quote from only spring 2010 very clearly states that Brazil, China, India, Israel, and Pakistan all have cluster munitions. So if there is actually a harm in the status quo of cluster munitions, the affirmative team can only solve for the cluster munitions that Russia has. Therefore, the cluster munitions that are out these other 5 or 6 countries will still be being used, and if the effects of cluster munitions are as dangerous as the affirmative team claims, they can't actually solve for the problem of cluster munitions, given all these other countries will still be using them. So we see that the affirmative team can't actually solve because there's an several international countries that actually have cluster munitions the affirmative team cannot hope to solve for. Now, solvency point 2 is Russian ratification. Russian ratification. I'm going to have 3 subpoints under here to explain the fact that, first of all, the affirmative team hasn't proven Russia will ratify, but second, 2 reasons why Russia would not. So subpoint A is the burden of proof. The burden of proof. The affirmative team has in the debate room what's called the burden of proof. Essentially, they have to prove to you that their plan will in fact work. And part of this is proving their solvency, and in this case, proving that Russia will in fact ratify this treaty that they are proposing. If Russia doesn't ratify the treaty, it doesn't go into force, and the affirmative plan doesn't have any advantages at all. So the affirmative has to prove that Russia will in fact ratify, with very recent evidence. My second subpoint is lack of trust. Lack of trust. And the fact is that the current relationship between the United States and Russia, in fact, over the past couple of days, has unraveled very, very much. And Russia doesn't trust the United States right now. I'm going to read a quote from Reuters news agency, but before I do so, let me explain the situation. In April of this year, the United States and Romania agreed on a joint missile defense shield to defend the United States. And Russia got very, very upset at us for this because they believe that we are backing up on commitments to consider them in the loop when it regards to missile defense. So the situation right now, in fact, I'm going to read a quote from Reuters yesterday about how the situation is working out. Quote, "Russia won the backing of China and other members of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, a regional security body, in criticizing U.S. plans for a missile shield, saying on Wednesday it could undermine global security," unquote. So Russia has got together a whole bunch of countries around the world, specifically in the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and they are going against the United States' plans to put the missile defense system in Romania. Now you may be thinking, well, how on earth does this relate? It relates because right now, Russia does not trust the United States. Russia has no reason to trust the United States right now because we made a commitment to them that we would keep them in the loop regarding missile defense, and we have failed to do so. So this is very much the center of our relationship right now, this Romania shield, and this proves that there's a lack of trust between the United States and Russia for this. So that's my second subpoint, that is the lack of trust. And my third subpoint is the cost to upgrade. The cost to upgrade. And the affirmative team also has to prove that Russia will in fact be willing to pay for the cost to upgrade these cluster munitions. The affirmative team claims something that would be like $2 billion, I believe, in cross-examination, and they need to prove that Russia is in fact willing to do this. If Russia wanted to upgrade their cluster munitions right now, they would do it. So the affirmative team needs to prove that the affirmative plan is in fact enough incentive for Russia to do this. And then I'd like to make another solvency point. Solvency point 3 is lack of enforcement. Lack of enforcement. And the affirmative team hasn't provided you with any way that their plan is actually going to enforce this in Russia. They haven't provided you in any way for the United States to force Russia to do the plan or verification of whether or not Russia has done this plan. So there's a lack of enforcement by the affirmative team and a lack of verification by the affirmative team to prove this treaty will in fact work and Russia will in fact follow through if they choose to ratify. Now finally we'll look at their justification. Their first was that of human life and their second was that of military supremacy. I have two general responses to these justifications combined. The first is out of use. Out of use. Now this was brought up in cross-examination. The last time the United States used cluster munitions was 2 years ago. The last time Russia used cluster munitions was 3 years ago. What exactly does this mean? This means that the United States and Russia haven't actually been using these recently. That the United States and Russia, the justifications of the affirmative team, there's no harm in the current system. We haven't used any cluster munitions for 2 years. Nothing has happened in the past 2 years on the issue of cluster munitions. So really we see that these weapons are out of use and they're not actually being used right now. There's no actual threat in the current system that these cluster munitions pose, given they are not being used. My second response is clearance required. Clearance required. Now the United States and Russia are both part of a treaty called the CCM, which is the Certain Conventional Weapons Convention, and it talks about cluster munitions. And this convention forces international countries who use cluster munitions to clear all the unexploded ones from the battlefield or from the city after they've been used. Captain Matthew E. Dunham, who I quoted earlier, said in spring 2010, quote, "In recent years, significant efforts have been made to develop and strengthen the CCW Convention. The newly ratified protocols include the Protocol on Explosive Remnants of War. Specifically, this Protocol on Explosive Remnants of War requires the clearance of unexploded ordnance, such as unexploded fragments of cluster munitions," unquote. So this is saying that part of this convention Russia is part of, it has a protocol which forces Russia to actually clear up the unexploded cluster munitions that happen afterward. So the harm of these unexploded cluster munitions that the affirmative is talking about, Russia has to clear up. So I would urge for a negative ballot. Thank you so much. I'm now open to any questions that the affirmative speaker may have.
Alright, did you provide a moral rationale for using weapons that cannot distinguish between the enemy, our soldiers, and civilians?
I did not, but the fact that we have used these weapons for 2 years...
I understand your arguments. We'll be getting to that in just a second.
All right.
Did you contest the fact that cluster munitions are the most dangerous conventional weapon in existence?
I didn't actually address this in my speech.
Right. Did you contest the fact that cluster munitions killed 6% of our soldiers in the Gulf War?
I did not contest this.
Did you contest...
The Gulf War was actually a long time ago.
Sure, before using that as historical precedent. Did you contest the fact that cluster munitions blindly slaughter civilians, which then is used as a terrorist recruitment tool?
I did not talk about this, no.
And just finally, just to make sure we are clear here, justifications 1C and 2C about how sensor-fused weapons are safer alternatives. Did you address either of those points?
I talked about how right now there's no actual threat of the cluster munitions being used now.
Let's actually go there then. You say clusters haven't been used in 2 years. Did you contest the fact that the United States dropped 220 million munitions on the nation of us?
When exactly was this?
That was during the Vietnam War.
Okay, I don't see how this exactly relates.
Okay, did you contest the fact that they actually did do it?
I haven't looked at evidence for this, so.
All right. Does the U.S. have a history of using cluster munitions when it invades a country?
In the past, yes.
Okay, great. And then you said under solvency that basically Russia's not going to ratify because there's a lack of trust. And your warrant here was talking about the Romanian missile defense shield.
Yeah, which is very much essential.
Absolutely. Now, during these discussions on the missile shield, was not the New START Treaty ratified?
The New START Treaty was ratified back in February. That's when it entered into
Right. So how long have we been discussing this issue of the missile shield with Russia?
The Romanian missile shield has been about 2 months.
Okay.
There's been other issues.
Okay, sure. And did any of your evidence say that this lack of trust meant Russia would not sign, or was that simply your own analysis, just so we're clear?
This is my analysis.
Okay,
The center
great.
of the relationship is that there's a lack of
Oh, I
trust.
absolutely understand your analysis, just
Right.
making sure where the quote ended. Now, is it your contention that if Russia wanted, this is hypothetical, if Russia wanted to sign this treaty, that they would violate it? Is that an argument you're making, or are you simply saying we're not sure if they want to, therefore they won't enforce?
The funny thing is, Russia is the kind of country who would sign this treaty and then let the United States fill up to their commitments, but not do their own, because there's no enforcement or verification provided by your plan.
You didn't happen to read Article 9 of the treaty text we gave you, did you?
Actually, I didn't have the time.
All
to
right,
read the
great. And
text.
then final question deals with your solvency about international stockpiles.
Sure.
And did you contest the fact that Russia and the U.S. are the 2 largest users and stockpilers of cluster munitions in the world?
Let me actually take a look at the piece of evidence. The piece of evidence said that...
I'm asking, did you argue that, or did you simply say there are other countries?
Right, let me take a look at the piece of evidence. Let's see. This piece of evidence right here, it talks about how the major stockpilers of it are Brazil, China, India, Israel, Pakistan.
Sure. So there are other large...
Russia is one of them.
Okay. Did you contest the fact that of that group of countries, U.S. and Russia are the largest?
Who's the largest is irrelevant.
Just final question. Is each independent human life valuable?
Oh, yes.
Thank you very much.